So we are having a champion amongst us who initially thought that the government-driven organization like IMD is not sufficient enough to deliver predictive analytics of the weather and coming out with reports on how the weather is going to unfold for the season. They created a company. So SkyMaps founder and CEO, so Jatin Singh is with us. So I would like him to take it forward and talk about iWeather, which he has been doing for nearly a decade now. So Jatin, pleasure having you. It's awesome to hear from you and your perspective on taking this forward. Floor is yours, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Venkatraman. It was a very detailed conversation. Mine is going to be shorter, and I guess I would, open it for Q&A. This is also the season. Deepak, one thing, I've been doing it for 17 years. I started in 2003. So, it's been a while, and the technology has changed. Just to give you a summary, who we are and what we do. So we are an integrated agri and weather data player, though the weather part is more visible. We do a lot of agri stuff, actually, a lot of precision agriculture, and we specialize on the fintech side. But I'll tell you how this works, and I guess it's relevant to everybody in this group. So I started out way back in 2003 by providing weather forecasting to newspapers and television. The second sector that I actually provided weather forecasts for was energy. I used to work in terms of power trading and everything. But the real pull, so when I started this business, I used to get the argument that weather is not important, this is not the West, people don't look at the weather, so on and so forth. Until I got, my pull from agri, and I started working for a couple of actually seed companies. So it was a problem then, and it's not a problem that has been perfectly solved now. Sowing rain. Can you tell me sowing rain? So I started developing technologies for sowing rain. And that is when precision weather actually comes in. The fact is that meteorology and weather in India is barely a subject. Not too many people outside the government has explored it, nor did we, it took generations to create technologies like that. So when we generally talk about precision weather, it is from the context of a place like the US, where the per capita ownership of farmland, is like 10,000 acres. Of course, you can show when it's going to rain in 10,000 acres. In 10,000 acres in India, you can have a couple of villages, maybe more actually. And here the problem is that how do you do, precision weather where the per capita acreage of land is less than 1 acre, going down 3% year on year. So in that, and there are various timeframes that you need to do this. So people are going to ask you about the monsoon. People are going to ask you, at different stages of the crop, sowing stage, vegetative stage, harvest, post-harvest. And then people are going to ask you, for operations, for sowing, for fertilizer usage, for pesticide, how close can you get? So I think this year we've solved this problem in 3 timeframes. We get a pretty decent guess of the monsoon. Now it comes out in the papers. It was not done before we were on the scene. It's not perfect, but you get some sense. This year, the monsoon for more or less should be okay. I don't see too many irritants in it. Now you can do a 10-day forecast on your general area, as in decide if it's going to be a wet regime or a dry regime, pretty much efficiently. It's all available on our website. There are maps available. 10 to 15 days, at least, for example, peninsular India rain is going to go down. East India, North India is actually going to go up. That is what the theme is going to be over the next 10 days. It will be exactly that. Then precision, how, over the 1 to 2 days or near a day, can you tell me what time is it going to rain? How much it's going to rain? So that is also to a great extent this year, I'm daring to solve that problem. So there are 2 things, and it's all available freely online. They've launched an app. It's called Mumbai. So we have 2-3 apps now. So we have SkyMed Weather app, which has every village mapped out. So it has 15 days, 7 days. It's got an hourly rainfall, of which if you start using it, try to look at the 1 to 2 hourly, 3 hourly rainfall. It actually is very dynamic. So that should help. And then we've come out with something called Mumbai Rain. So if you download the app, if you're in Mumbai, you actually have every inch mapped out in real-time rainfall. So locality by locality where it's raining, and it's more from a disaster management perspective, and it gives you a very good 2 hourly rainfall for your borough that you're in the city. Now you can transplant that into agriculture also. It's same thing. It's just that in Mumbai, it's easy to structure and easy to identify. And then we're launching one today. It's called Kerala Rain, which is for all of Kerala, real time, thunderstorms. So we can track every thunderstorm in real time, flooding, flash floods, 15 days, 1 day, 2 days, purely from a Kerala perspective. And all that is absolutely freely available to anyone. We are also, we have real time feeds. So our API is absolutely free of cost, available on our website. So we're very good at real time also. And the fact is that, the meteorological weather risk is probably the single largest risk in the matrix of things. And if you use this data and you get used to this data and give feedback to us, because it is not perfect, it's one of those things that get better over a period of time, you can actually create a lot of surpluses without spending too much money. So, that is my thesis. On the agri side, we actually, because we are the institutional data players for agri insurance, and now we're also for lending. So we work, for instance, with State Bank of India, ICICI Bank. We do KCC underwriting because we take all productivity, all satellite data, all NDVI, VCI, farmer diary, input, seed quality, production, and because we have all the weather data, we're able to do a pretty decent credit score. So, we do most of what, and what State Bank of India does, among many other things like disaster management, national, Nagaland, Kerala, Maharashtra, and water resources. So, that's all I have to say right now. Yep, I can take questions. I can't hear you, Deepak. I think you're mute.
Yeah, great. That was very brisk, fast, and to the point. As always, I've heard a lot of sessions from you, and it's always very fast paced, and it's great insights you have provided. My first question would be around, if you see that, the weather science is still evolving going forward. Over past 17 years, your journey, how do you see new technologies coming in, and where do you see that going forward? What new technologies, because people start talking from quantum computing to the ground-based sensors, which are called weather stations and all that. So how do you see the journey of 17 years in a technology, and going forward, what new technologies do you think would become more relevant in agriculture or in weather science?
Okay, there's certain limitations. So in my lifetime, in your lifetime, you will not be able to forecast rainfall month by month, months in advance. It is not going to happen. We don't know how it is done. It's like traveling to Mars. There's no way that you could do it. We do not know the predictability. And a lot of that is because we haven't sampled the oceans enough. So we will not get that sense. In terms of medium range forecast, I think that is going to improve your 15-day forecast, because the dynamics for that is getting colder. It is already better. We've realized this. I think that is going to get better. In terms of your, say, which is kind of there is an application for in agriculture on a dynamic basis. Your 12 to 6 hour forecast, you can use it for aviation disaster management. Now that is going to get much better. A lot of that is because of ground-based sensors. So and that is where you'll see these 3 time frames. Kind of your monsoon forecast overall is going to get better, with better understanding of IOD and all of that. But between 4 months and 1 month, there is nothing I can do. Those 3 months you really can't see. I think that is how, I think the more we invest in instrumentation, the more our near term is going to get better and better. And over, say, 10, 20 years, your medium to long term would get better. So the key to meteorology is actually not computing. It's actually sensors. And that's what I also got in, because the American narrative is that you deploy computing to get a better forecast. That is because the Americans forget that India instrumentation layer that they have is not as strong. So you need a lot of instrumentation data and a lot of supercomputing. So, that is, so in India, it is the more you spend time on instrumentation. So today we have 7,000 sensors. That allows us tremendous capacity that we did not have before.
Awesome. And do you think that impact of climate change, which is so unpredictable, also impacting the forecast in weather going forward? Because things are going to become improved.
I think, the problem is that Indian civilian science does not sell itself. We don't have public advocacy. For example, long-term monsoon forecast is something that the IMD figured out way back in 1980, but it was not really discussed. Similarly, the impact of climate change, and I can show you a paper from it, okay? This was done 20 years ago in India, 2025, almost half a generation ago, which said that India will get dry till 2020 or so, and then a wet phase will start. Okay. And this is something that was done years ago. It also said that in the first phase, the number of the averages will remain the same or go down slightly, but the number of rainy days will go down. That means you will get a lot of, what was an evenly distributed monsoon over the last 20 years would get distorted in all the rain coming at once. So, and now over the next, say, 10-year period, because you basically work, when you look at climate science at tridecadal cycles, you're getting into a wet phase. And all of that is because of the warming of the planet.
No, very, very, very well articulated. And I fully agree with you. In India, the advocacy for using scientific temperament is not what it should be for any developing nation like us, with such a beautiful set of people like you who understand these things. But unfortunately, our voice are not that loud, which can create a bang in the ears of the regulators. So that's a ground reality. Let's understand that. So that brings us to the last question, which is basically the question from the audience. Dr. Akhil is asking you, can you elaborate a little bit more on Doppler radar and how it can be used in weather, if you can tackle that question?
See, Doppler technology is available in medical sciences. Doppler radar, Doppler weather radar is a particular kind of radio frequency based systems, and there are dual polarization radars, and there is a S-band radar, C-band radar. Radar is a real-time thing. It is, so what you do is, and so it's in Mumbai rain, it is a radar in real time tells you where it is raining, because it gives you a radio frequency feedback. Okay, so especially very important for thunderstorms, flash floods, aviation. It also can tell you hail. It also can tell you high, wind and gust and tornado structure and cyclone and all of that. So it is the instrument itself is amazingly useful in real time. Now, what we have done is, because we get high resolution cloud images every 15 minutes, we're able to project the radar out about an hour or so. So with a pretty decent approximation. So for example, if I am sitting in Delhi, Delhi is going to get very heavy rainfall about 24th or so. Okay, now if the storm is mostly going to come from northwest. So if say Rewari is raining, I can approximate what time Noida and Faridabad are going to rain and what intensity it will be. So that is how you use a combination. Also, radars are important because ground-based sensor, like an automatic weather station, is basically sampling of the rainfall at that one point. Demand in India is that, especially with farmers, especially on a post facto soil moisture basis, can I figure out the soil moisture, groundwater, general availability of water, irrigation at a square inch or a per plot basis? So if I'm able to interweave the automatic weather station data, there's an instrument called lightning data, which basically takes the electronic pulse created by the negative and positive charges, this cloud to cloud and cloud to cloud lightning, and the actual radar data, and intermix it. I will get a very fine grid of rainfall in a post facto basis. It is called analysis data, which if I give it to you guys, so if you have very high resolution, digital elevation map, and you've got land records, and you've got dense precipitation data going years, for June, July, August, September, and all the dry months and all the wet months going in year series, then the exact availability of water on that plot of land. Interweave that with soil quality data, interweave that with varietal, changes or crop pattern changes and productivity, then your strategy completely changes. And then you see that if the space has had successive droughts, or it has had no drought, or what is so that is where now coming back all the way to Doppler weather radar. So it is, if you sample the water in the atmosphere before it falls at very high, the problem in India is that our Doppler weather radars are not of very high quality. That is not because of the government, I would blame, because there's something in India which we all deal with called L1 tendering, right? So you get L1. There's nothing you can do. But there are better radars there. The Indian space and defense meteorological radars are actually better, the C-band radars, which are not available to us.
Just trying to be a little bit funny, actually. In fact, we in Gujarat, we faced that problem because we bought ventilators on L1 and it ended up not being ventilators. So thanks a lot, Jatin, and wish you all the best for ground cover, which you are doing fabulous work on that, and look forward to be in touch with you going forward. Thanks a lot.